I would like to introduce Nadine Snyder. Nadine is entering her second year of her master's program in the environmental science and management at the Bren School at UC Santa Barbara in California. It's been such a pleasure having Nadine be part of the team in the Office of Sustainable Energy at DVRPC. She's shown such a passion for the work. She has soaked up information like a sponge, and we've thrown a lot at her this summer. And she's really quick to connect the dots to larger concepts. So we're really grateful to have had her, to have had Nadine working with us in Philly this summer. And yeah, without further ado, I'll present Nadine.
Okay, thank you. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so this summer I worked as an energy benchmarking fellow and I helped DVRPC prepare an energy benchmarking ordinance. So what energy benchmarking is the measuring, recording, and reporting of a building's energy use. And it's important as it allows building owners to compare their building's energy use to other buildings, and then they can use this data to determine how to improve efficiency. It also gives policymakers a baseline as to how much energy various buildings are using so that they can develop building efficiency mandates in the future. One of the drawbacks of energy benchmarking is that smaller municipalities often do not have the resources to do benchmarking on their own, and that's where DVRPC is coming in by developing these model ordinances so that municipalities can just join on without investing too many of their own resources. And the ultimate goal of this is to create healthy communities and reduce emissions. So next slide. So with energy benchmarking, typically there is a goal of how many buildings or how much square footage you want data from. And you can determine how to reach this goal through threshold analysis. So our threshold is the minimum building size at which we would encourage buildings to participate in benchmarking. So for example, if our threshold is 50,000 square feet, then all buildings at or over 50,000 square feet would participate in our program. So this graph shows the number of buildings broken out by county, and then the total square footage across the entire area. So that's like the line that's on the graph, and then the number of buildings are the columns. If buildings of a certain size were encouraged to participate in benchmarking, and we started at 10,000 square feet, and then we increased in increments of 10,000. So the main takeaway from this is that although fewer buildings are captured under a 50,000 or above threshold when compared to a 10,000 or above threshold, the gentle slope of the square footage line shows that there is not a large difference between the square footage captured at thresholds of 10,000 square feet and at 50,000 square feet. So this is significant. As we said before, smaller buildings do not have the resources to comply with benchmarking ordinances. So by focusing on benchmarking large buildings, we can meet our goal and capture a large amount of total square footage in buildings with high energy use without overburdening these smaller buildings. So that gentle slope essentially shows that we can start benchmarking at like 40 or 50,000 square feet instead of requiring 10,000 square feet or above buildings to benchmark. However, we also want to make sure we're leaving room for error as our ordinance isn't going to be a required program. Therefore, we want to set a threshold where the number of available buildings is higher than our target, so that if some buildings don't participate, we're still meeting our goals. Next slide. So to develop an equitable benchmarking policy, we must lead with race, as BIPOC communities typically experience other disparities as well. So by leading with race, we can help capture all of those disparities. So this map shows the number of buildings that are over 50,000 square feet, and also communities that are over 50% racial minority. And ultimately, we can see that there is some correlation between areas of high racial diversity and areas with numbers of buildings that are over 50,000 square feet. However, some townships may have lower diversity or fewer buildings, but still may consolidate their large buildings within their diverse populations. So the spatial analysis may not capture like all of the nuances that are going on. And then further steps for this would be to reach out to communities that are identified by this analysis to see like what concerns they would have about our program, and also to see what resources they would need in order to benchmark their buildings. And ultimately, my main takeaway from the summer is that it takes a significant amount of time to develop a program and a local ordinance that will serve everyone. And ultimately, our hope is that our research will save us time, as if our ordinance is well developed, it'll be easier to implement and will be more widely accepted. However, I don't know if you can hear these trucks outside of my apartment, but okay. However, the climate crisis gives us little time for action, and my fellowship has been meaningful as I've been able to increase DVRPC's capacity and speed up the development of these programs so that we can address the climate crisis quickly. So, thank you.
Great job, Nadine. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about your experience of the knowledge you had when you came into this program or this project, and then what you picked up and what you'll be carrying with you and taking away into your sustainability work.
Yeah, I would say I'd have some experience looking at energy use, but mainly in transportation sector. I didn't really know that much about buildings. So coming in, I've really learned a lot about building energy use. And also, I didn't really know that much about benchmarking and I guess the steps that go into developing efficiency policies. So this really showed me the importance of gathering data before you develop a policy. Like you have to know a region before you can develop a policy that adequately suits it. So it's really shown me the importance of that.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for one question. So someone had asked, can your project help them apply for such EPA grants that address this aspect of environmental justice in BIPOC communities? Do you think that could help there?
Yeah, we have definitely we have talked about the Justice 40 communities when we were looking at EPA grants, and I think that this analysis definitely does help with that and for applying to funding.
Beautiful. And just doing this work, we just have time for one more. I'll ask. Just doing this work, do you have any insights? So this is a huge topic, environmental justice, and how do we work with marginalized communities and these types of things. And we talked about this a bit. And I know some of the next steps you talked about was going out and working with communities. How do you think that? How can you bridge that gap between what we address often in scientific language and terminology with communities that may not carry the same language? How can we bridge that gap of understanding between the communities we want to serve and then the work that we're doing?
I think you have to connect the science to issues that are important to those communities. For example, benchmarking allows buildings to become more efficient. And if buildings are more efficient, like they're better insulated, then maybe these communities can pay less in utility costs and then pay more for things that they actually want. And also you have to connect like benchmarking to other policies as well, such as policies that would lower rents, so that once buildings become more efficient, then landowners or landlords can't just charge more rents because those buildings are now more desirable. So I think it's important to connect like environmental policies to other policies as well to really make sure they're all equitable.
Great, thanks, Nadine. Good work.
Yeah, really good work. So valuable. Thank you.